So you said that it's possible that we could have an entire generation of people who aren't willing to think about the things that you're not supposed to. What is the antidote to that? Not culturally, but on an individual level. Like if you want to raise a child who is bold enough to ask questions or follow their curiosities, or you're a young adult or a fully fledged adult and you're like, I really want to be like willing to think. What do you do? How do you train the mind outside of the parameters of what the very narrow subset of ideas that we're being told are acceptable?
This is probably a question I should ask you, but I'll give you my answer and maybe you can give me yours. I mean, the first obvious thing is to model good behavior. I mean, kids do mostly look up to their parents, maybe not when they're 14, but other than
depends on the kid.
Yeah, and those brief years, but I mean, even 14-year-olds sometimes do. And so obviously modeling that kind of behavior, and I think you can do that since they're a kid, actually. Like when they ask for something and you say no, or you set barriers, I don't see a problem with explaining why there's barriers. And then if they keep trying to break them, then okay, you can just say, no, that's the rule, follow it. But like, there's always this weird resistance by a lot of parents, I've noticed, to explain why there are rules. But actually, like some kids kind of just do want to know because some rules are stupid. And, if you're a smart kid or a curious kid, like it really is like a legitimate question. And so I actually think like from a young age, you could model that, not 2 maybe, but, above 7 or whatever. So that's one clear answer. And then the other is like, nurturing and designing the kind of education where they get to follow their curiosity. And so, being able to say like, I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know a lot about that subject, but you should read more and I'm going to read some too. And let's talk about it. That seems to me an appropriate way to model that kind of behavior where you have like epistemic humility, curiosity, and then potentially maybe you end up at a different conclusion than your own kid. And you're like, wait a minute, let's have it out. It sounds weird to argue with your kid, like in a Socratic way, but like seems reasonable to me.
It's really not odd though. It's important because you want your kids you don't want your kids to just blindly listen to you. You want them to choose to listen to you because they respect you and they know that you can come up with cogent rationale for why they ought to do something or why something is the way that it is.
Right.
And you're not doing them any favors either if you're just having them blindly follow you, because you're doing the same thing that the education system is doing. And you can push back on this if you disagree, because I may also have stronger opinions about the education system at large than you do. But like you have, like basically in school, you're just told like the teacher, the authority figure has the right answer. And you need to find that same right answer or you are wrong. And it's less important to understand why the answer is right than it is to know what the right answer is and to be able to repeat it back when asked. And so you end up with kids who are just like learning how to follow the right answer, not how to like dissect, analyze, rationalize, disagree with if they so choose that answer. And so if you're just repeating the same behavior at home, you're creating the same outcome. Like they might agree with your right answers as opposed to the teacher's right answers. And those might be ideologically different, but you're still raising a kid who just is following what they're told instead of grappling with these ideas and being able to grapple with new ideas that they haven't encountered before and come to their own conclusions, which is really, really important as an adult to be able to do. And so like you want your kids to be challenging you, especially as they get older, especially as they get into middle school and high school, because they're almost adults now. Yep. And they're going to need to be able to do this once they enter the real world. So I'm a very big fan of having like wrestling with ideas with your kids and disagreeing with them. It's hard, but it's necessary if you want them to actually become thinking adults, not just automatons.
Right. And to respect you for the right reasons rather than respect you because you're bigger and stronger and can beat them up. Right.
Or take away their dinner or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. Yeah. And the whole idea of, you use the word right answer. And I think what you really meant was, well, I mean, because a lot of schools will teach you, quote, the answer, but it's actually not correct, or it's, certainly not justifiable. It's some, in some cases it might be, scientifically plausible, but turn out to be false. In other cases, it's purely ideological. But either way, yeah, if you're not free to try to justify why, you've arrived at a certain answer, then that's kind of not knowledge. That's just a set of dogmas that are being sort of propounded. So, and I guess your view is that was the point of the public education system to begin with, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was intended to create a very certain type of person that would be useful to society at large, which people think is like a right-wing internet conspiracy. But then you go into the literature of the people who created the system, and it's very explicit. They were not trying to hide this at all. They were like, we have all of these immigrants coming into this country, and we don't know what to do with them. And we have this rapidly industrializing system that we need to make sure we have people who can come in and fill all of the spots. So we need to create a system that just like mass produces relatively interchangeable people who are relatively well behaved enough and are like relatively skilled, but aren't thinking too hard about things because then they're not really useful for all of these roles anymore. We just need a lot of those people produced consistently. We need like a yearly supply of them.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't intended to challenge people to think that hard about things.
And maybe it's no accident that mass public schools, compulsory public schools really are a product especially of America, of the United States, where you're assimilating large numbers of, as you said, like low-skilled immigrants. Some of them don't have common values, mostly coming from Europe, but different parts of Europe. And
they don't all get along.
Yeah. So, traditional religious differences and so on. And so in a way, it's quite literally an assimilationist indoctrination program. That's the point. I mean,
that is literally the point.